got involved in politics several years ago, and it wasn't politics to me. I live in a small town in upstate New York, approximately 5,000 people on the Canadian border, and I found that I was spending a lot of time pointing my finger at local government officials, and I know none of you probably ever complain about decisions that are being made around you, but I found that I was complaining a lot. And I felt at that point I had a responsibility that I either had to put up or shut up. And I ran for office. And I became a village trustee, then a village mayor, and then I served 12 years in the state assembly. But there are guiding principles that basically have given me an underpinning for government. I believe in government for the people. And this administration believes in government for the people. And what we're going to give you tonight is some information not only on the legislation that we're going to go through, the Citizen Empowerment Act, but we're also going to give you some information on programs that are currently offered by the Department of State. So you'll also have some idea that there's some technical expertise that you can access. There are people that can try to help you answer questions you might have. So on behalf of Governor Andrew Cuomo and my Secretary of State, Cesar Perales, I'd certainly like to welcome all of you here today. Thank Hofstra University and the Good Government Voters Association for putting together this forum this evening. The most important thing that we can do, no matter where you are in the political spectrum, is become informed. Know your choices. Know the options that are out there. Know where you can go to get questions answered. And it doesn't mean you're always going to agree. But we're one state, whether you're from where I'm from, or Long Island, New York City, Buffalo, we're one state. And the truth is, we're as strong as our weakest community. And for years and years, we've had government entities that have been in existence because that's the way it's always been. And guess what? Just because that's the way it's always been, that doesn't make it right. And that's why we have to start looking at doing things differently. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Good. Okay. I'm also joined tonight with Mr. Rob Rokel, who's from the Department of State. He's a land use specialist too, and he deals with a lot of the technical issues in different communities, as communities look at what their options are and they start studying how to change the structure of government. How can they, it's very difficult, and so you have to obtain information, and we have a good department of people that can be of assistance to you. $10,521 governments. That's the number of governmental entities in the state, government units. There are overlapping local government units, providing duplicative services, creating needless, wasteful bureaucracies. You can see overlapping taxing boundaries. There is no contemporary rationale for this mess. Like I said in the beginning, it's because this was always the way it's been. But guess what? We're at a point that doesn't make it right. And we're at a point that property taxpayers can no longer sustain because this is always the way it's been. I can just go on. 10,521. It's also a system that's very confusing to a lot of people, that a lot of people don't understand. The density of local government and local government entities is so overlapping that it just makes sense that we start studying the way to do things differently. And I was giving a speech in the Adirondacks a few months ago. Actually, it was early into when I was appointed. And a man in the back of the room raised his hand and started waving his hand, and he said to me, "You know, you're from the state, right?" And I said, "Yes." You're a state official, right? I said, well, I'm a Deputy Secretary of State in the Cuomo administration. You're going to tell us how to make government right? Why don't you start with getting your own house in order first? And I looked at him and I said, you're right. You are right. But let me tell you something. Let me tell you what's going on in Albany with SAGE. In every state agency, every stone is being looked under. Duplication of services, redundancy of government services in state agencies, over-regulation in state agencies. I can tell you firsthand that there's being a thorough review in every state agency. So it is beginning in Albany. But Albany cannot dictate to local governments what you need to do. That's not my reason for being here today. It's not to tell you what you should do or what you should not do. I'm here today to give you information, to empower you to make choices for yourself. But this administration and this governor is very serious about cleaning house in Albany as well, and having a government that's efficient, effective, and responsive to the needs of the citizens of this state. Professor Gerald Benjamin said that the current system that just grew and grew and grew. What does that mean for the average taxpayer? New Yorkers have the highest local tax burden in the country. And I don't want to mislead anyone, because if you look at the top of this graph, you notice it's dollars per thousand of personal income paid by individuals for local taxes. That's the category that makes us the highest in the nation. It dwarfs all other states and far exceeds the national average. And the one thing we all have to remember that sometimes we forget is no matter where you are on that spectrum, we're all in this together. And we've got to figure out how we reinvent things that make sense, that's logical, that works for the people, that's responsive to the people, and that we can afford. Any of you ever see those things come in the mail? The result of the hodgepodge is multiple tax bills. A person pays county and town tax. You might pay a village tax, pay a school tax. You pay taxes for special districts. How do we change that? Pre-citizen empowerment legislation, it was pretty much mission impossible. There's the different flow charts for how you might go about something. Town and special districts would be your upper left-hand corner. Those are the steps you'd have to take. Real easy, right? You might have to have a degree in physics to figure through that. Villages and towns over there, those are the steps you'd have to take. And what local official is really going to undertake going through this? Up where I live, I mean, local government officials, it's a part-time, volunteer type thing that you're really kind of doing everything. And you have outside employment in addition to that. So who's going to take time to go through all those steps to try to figure out how to run more efficiently? To consolidate under the old law, and this is the old law, this isn't where we are today. It's just the history of how you might had to go about things before. For towns, it was Article 5B. Villages, Article 19 of the Village Law. Fire districts, Town Law, Section 17082. Fire protection districts would be different. Commissioner-run special districts would be different. Town special districts, miscellaneous districts. And I can attest to this firsthand when I was the mayor, the village governor, when we tried to do something. When we tried to change something. There were so many roadblocks that you just kind of hang your head and say, you know, we're trying to do the right thing. We want to share services. We want to be more efficient. But we're running into all sorts of legal roadblocks, and it's not making sense. Additionally, a lot of the provisions of the different laws that would govern how you move forward were inconsistent.